In this episode of the Grumpy Gits, we talk to Gurdas Singh, son of Avtar Singh, a Manchester Sikh priest who was attacked and left for dead. We talk about his father, the impact the attack has had on his family, and what it's like as a doctor from inside and outside the NHS. We also talk to author, musician and Cannes Film Award winner for Best Song, Rachel Walker-Mason, and her love for musical theatre, as well as her passion for spreading the word about the reality of living with postnatal depression. All this and our usual favourites as Chris pitches Grumpy Git on Grumpy Git with some truly bizarre See You Next Tuesday questions. And dear Grumpy Gits, here's from an accidental flasher. So grab a drink, relax in your favourite armchair and laugh out loud with the Grumpy Gits. And remember, don't be grumpy alone. The Grumpy Gits are proudly partnered with the Disability Expo being held at XL in London on the 6th and 7th of July 2023. It's going to be an incredible event, so follow the links in the description to sign up.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, wherever in the world you are watching this. And welcome to another amazing episode of the Grumpy Gits, the podcast that always says, I've got chills, they're multiplying, and I'm losing control. Because the power you're supplying is electrifying. I am your glorious host, Adam Pearson, leading you through this wondrous world of bullshittery. But I am not alone. Oh no, I am joined as ever by three bastions among men, three glorious, glorious mammals, all of whom have amazing lives, amazing stories, and amazing facts. For example, I invented cauliflower. Anyway, coming up first.
When Adam put a Facebook post up that was asking people what he loves, and I put cauliflower, and he said too soon. Here we are 3 days later.
For Adam, which one came first, the cauliflower or the chicken?
I'll be honest, you've already ruined this intro, lads. I spent a lot of time on these intros. I don't just
you started off with Greece. That was never going to go well.
I put a lot of time and effort into these intros, lads, and you've already ruined it for me.
Yeah.
So let's carry on. Let's carry on. Coming up first is a man who, if rumours to be believed, went into his local butcher's and the butcher bet him 50 quid he couldn't reach 2 bits of meat hanging on the wall, and he declined because the stakes were too high. How are you doing, Chris Lee Smith?
Oh, that's awful. That's so bad. I'm busy, mate. I'm really busy at the moment, so I haven't had time to reflect whether I'm good, bad, miserable, happy. So, yeah, I've just been very, very busy.
But sometimes it's good to keep busy. I often say a bored Adam Pearson is a dangerous Adam Pearson. And I imagine that we are very much kindred spirits in that regard. So I'm glad you're keeping yourself busy, and I know that I'm not going to hear about you on the news doing something mental.
No, you're not.
Says the Disability Podcast.
Yeah. Man falls into lake chasing one-legged goose. Anyway, I am glad you are here, my friend. And our next host invented Tipex. Correct me if I'm wrong. How are you doing, Duncan?
I'm good, but the Tipex is all over my screen. It's dreadful. It's really getting in the way of seeing you guys. Not that that's necessarily a bad thing, I suppose.
No.
I'm quite well. I getting miserable watching the news and reading up on the news at the moment. So I've been just trying to find dodgy old 90s comedies on Netflix and Prime to pass my time and try and salvage something of my sanity.
I have also been watching a lot of Games Master on the old YouTube just to stay away from the whole nonsense that's going on.
Well, I've got to say, Adam, you'll be happy to hear my son decided he'd open up and tell me who his favourite Grumpy Gits were. And in order, it was you, me, Chris, Simon.
That is,
I really hate your kids.
that is the correct order.
I came second to my own fucking son.
Who's the daddy? Who's the daddy?
But before you introduce anyone else, I hear you've had quite a week this week.
Oh, you mean the Power 100 last night?
Yeah.
Where I was up and like, oh, mate, I was hanging out my ass this morning. Like, disabled people can drink. And I've forgotten because I rarely hang out with them because some of them wind me up. But anyway, that's by the by. So, yeah, it was, crazy time. But Power 100, I made the list. Last year I beat Simon by one place. This year, significantly more.
Were you there, Simon?
I launch a global disability app, and I'm nowhere.
It's that MasterChef clout. That's what I'm talking about.
I think it's the Pornhub clout, mate. I wouldn't go that far. Yeah.
It absolutely is. It absolutely is.
And the worst thing is I was the only one who nominated Adam, and he's on the list.
I nominated Adam.
I nominated Adam.
In fairness, because you messaged me and said, "Can you nominate Adam?" I nominated you as well. But, for all the good.
Oh, never mind. Yeah, they don't like me. Not many people do. I'm a bit. Let's face it, I'm a bit of a dick, but I don't care.
Yeah. You heard it here first, folks.
Yeah,
you heard it here first.
straight from the horse's mouth. And finally, you've already heard from him. A man that once wondered where he could find a turtle with no legs. My suggestion, where have you left it, you idiot? Simon Sampson, how are you?
I'm all right, mate. I'm not too bad. I'm hot. A different background. I'm at my second home in Spain, and it was 33 degrees today. So, bit up to high heaven with the gnat bites sitting on the beach yesterday. Did a bit of go-karting today. That was exciting. It took 3 people to get me in and out.
That's amazing. I wish I'd have been there for it. It's some kind of fucking mission, like trying to get a hippo in an MRI machine.
Yeah, because I can't move my feet, I can only push my legs forward. But because of the pedals, the way they were designed, because they're upright, I could actually push the pedals forward with my legs. Because I can move my legs, but I can't move my feet. So all I had to do is push my foot forward, push my leg forward, and I could go. So once I learned that there was no stopping me. So I did about 20 laps, which was good fun. I couldn't overtake anyone. Let's face it, I'm huge, and there's only one small engine. So my mates overtook me about 6 times. But I'd got into. It's the first time I've done it in about 10 years, which I was really impressed with. Talk about getting your independence back. I was really because I went there and I was really annoyed that I couldn't do it. And then I thought, what? If people helped me in, and I could, I probably could do it, and I gave it a go, and I did it. So, I was really chuffed with myself.
Well done, we're chuffing you too, Simon. So, for those of you with Spain, go-karting, and hippo in an MRI machine on your Grumpy Gits bingo cards, congratulations, you've won. Anyway, I suppose we've got to crack on with the show with our regular opening segment where our so-called friend asks us things that make us like, or recently, are just weird.
Yeah,
I'm afraid to ask Chris, but I have to because I'm contractually obligated to. What have you got for us this week?
Okay, I'll go. Question 1. I'm going to get on with it. Question 1. Name from 1 to 4 who has the worst taste in music and why. Let's start with Simon.
Oh, well, of course it's me. I mean, I grew up in a house full of. Not the best. Oh, I thought you said worst.
Oh, sorry, it is the worst. Yeah, it is.
Yeah.
And I agree with you. Yeah.
No, absolutely. Okay,
I get the feeling there's not going to be a lot of argument here.
Yeah, it's me. I mean, everyone's been in my car, and I like to sing. And I grew up in a house of women. I didn't know who the Beatles were until I was 16. Yeah. Okay, so you got to give me a break. I mean, I grew up in a house with Celine Dion, musicals MGM with my mum. It was only when my sister moved out that she was a big fan of Queen. I didn't know who they were till I was 15. This is my childhood.
Who invites Simon off? Hasn't heard of Queen.
And for legal reasons, we should say, when someone says who grew up in a house with Celine Dion, he means her music.
Yeah.
Not.
I mean, Barbra Streisand. I mean, the Sound of Music was played every week in the house. My mum's favorite film. So I wasn't exposed to that kind of music, so I had no idea. It was really. I mean, I went to. I'm
pretty certain if you actually look it up, that's a form of child abuse.
I was going to say,
social services will be on your fucking doorstep wanting the details.
So I remember for my 14th birthday or 15th birthday, I went to school in a Welcome to the Jungle t-shirt from Guns N' Roses. Okay, and I thought it was a really cool t-shirt. I had no idea they were a band, and I got the piss taken out of me like you wouldn't believe. I just thought it was a really cool t-shirt. Yeah, this is the life I grew up with.
Are we skipping this question because it's so obvious, or?
I mean, it's
the best. It's supposed to be a ranking, so we all know.
It's supposed to be 1 to 4. Yeah, so who's go up?
Can I justify myself for a second? Because
I don't think you can.
You did that last time.
Justify that.
No. For the past 5 years, I've been following Top of the Pops 2. Or whatever it is, Top of the Pops from the 1960s on BBC 4 all the way up to today. And I've been downloading music after every show and listening to it after every show. So I've got AC/DC, I've got Guns N' Roses, I've got Bon Jovi, I've got Whitesnake. And I've been discovering them in my later years. And it's really quite nice to do that, I think. I mean, yes, I still like Steps.
Guns N' Roses fan. It's quite nice, yeah.
That's what they want to hear, isn't it? It's quite nice.
Yeah. Whitesnake. I mean, it's quite palatable. Yeah, it's.
I've got Foo Fighters and down. I've been to Leeds Festival. I've been to Reading Festival. I've been to them all. So I discovered them a bit later in life. But I do enjoy ABBA. I do enjoy Steps. I do enjoy the pop music that comes along with that. I love rocking out to them in the car.
He emailed me earlier this week thinking I was Duncan from Blue. Trying to get them roped into something. Did the wrong Duncan. He wants
Did
Blue.
I really?
Like for
Oh, no. I thought... And I replied saying I was going to get Steps next and asked them if they wanted to come to the awards.
I replied saying, I think you've got the wrong Duncan. He's gone back, I'm getting Steps next. I'm like, for fuck's sake.
I thought you were Duncan James. I never caught on to it.
You could have had some fun with that. Oh god!
It's a real mystery why you missed that Power 100. I tell you.
Oh, mate.
Actually, you know what? I would have never actually got caught onto that unless you told me, because I thought it was Duncan James replying.
Even though I replied and said, I think you've got the wrong Duncan.
Oh god!
You didn't say that. You said, I don't think this is for us, mate. For me, mate. And I thought, because I was asking them if Blue wanted to do an award ceremony next year.
Oh, dude.
Oh, right. So
reply, Duncan.
Oh, so now I've got to get.
Not ringing.
Oh, no. Right. I haven't asked Steps yet, so I'm going to go back to Blue and see if they're free first.
Right. Can we get on with the question? Because we're going to take ages.
When you do email Steps, for the love of Christ, make sure you email the right Ian Watkins. That's all I'm saying.
So, out of us who's got from best to worst, Duncan's got the best, obviously. Then you look at the background, Chris, I've never heard you listen to any music, so I've got no idea what you like. So I'm going to go Adam, then me, then Chris, by default.
Wait,
Adam, then you, then Chris. But that puts you in...
No, Duncan, Adam, me, Chris.
Fuck off.
You're putting
listen to-
yourself third.
Listen to Robbie Williams. I could listen to a dog farting and my taste in music would be better than yours. Jesus Christ.
In Chris's defense, you do have a signed album by Joe Almeida.
I do have a signed album by Joe Almeida. Yeah, cheers for that, Joe. Yeah. I didn't even
Understand my
request it.
frustration. Understand my frustration. Right, let's move on to someone that knows what they're talking about. Let's go with Adam next.
Me, Duncan, you, and Simon. And I reckon me and Duncan have the exact same taste in music. So
I think it's almost out of 3 because I think we're almost identical in our musical tastes.
we absolutely are. Oh, what did you think of the bands I sent you last week?
Oh, I fucking loved it. It was fantastic. Yeah. See, that's what I love is that you send me stuff and it's like, oh, this is great. This is exactly what I like.
He listens to Bewitched.
What? Oh, well, yeah, okay. There's that element there. That's got to be answered.
It's on video.
So is me, Amaranthi, and Iron Maiden, and
that's just one part of your musical taste.
Okay. Meet me halfway. I'm better than Simon. That's all I want to hear from you.
Yeah. I mean, unless you've got anything to do with Robbie Williams, yes, you are better than Simon. Like I said, a dog fart is better than Simon. Yeah. Let's go to Duncan next.
I think we've said it. I think it's Simon, worst to best, Simon, you. And I actually do think Adam and I we agree on a lot of music. Yes, I've never been seen on Twitter or on TikTok dancing to, Bewitched or anything like that. But that aside, I mean, it's been a great week this week, I've got to say, because Alter Bridge's new album came out. Big plug there. But fucking awesome. It's so just been fantastic. This is Nirvana week for me, not the band, just the state of mind. It's been fantastic. So yeah, that's where I'm going.
Question 2. If we all became single in order of 1 to 4, who would be first and last to get a wanted partner based on personality alone? Let's start with the loudest laugh. Adam. See why when I looked, I turned the page and I saw my questions, why I burst out laughing because I forgot.
You're such an asshole. Oh my god. So personality alone.
Personality alone, and they are wanted partners. So we're single, we want a partner. Who would get a girlfriend? Sorry, who would be first and last to get a wanted partner based on personality alone?
Okay. Wait, I'm going first to last, right?
Okay.
I reckon first would be Duncan, because he's just a bloody nice bloke. Then I reckon... Oh, this is hard, because the rest of us are just arseholes. I mean, we all know my dating history, so I'm at least third, maybe 4.
Adam's very vindictive.
All right, here we go. Duncan, Chris, me, you. There we are. Who's vindictive now?
Okay, let's go with Duncan next.
I'm still surprised I've got a wife, to be honest. The things that I've said on previous episodes, and particularly the Grumpy Dads, the things that I've said that have potentially put me in a very single position very quickly. I'd have to go number 4. I'd be very surprised if I meet anyone. So on that basis, yeah, I guess you, Adam, Simon, myself.
Okay. And finally, Simon.
Well, I threw a flip flop in my wife's face yesterday, so
husband of
domestic
the year
abuse.
again.
There we go.
No, literally,
This is the man who said I'm a good husband.
that's literally assault, bro. Like,
Yeah.
it wasn't intentional. I was throwing it onto the
That's
beach in the
what they
wind
all
course. It went
say.
straight into her
That's
face.
you look watch Judge Judy.
oh,
Every single one of them.
Have you try and throw a flip flop? It goes in the wind. Oh, let's face it, it's going to be me because, I said it earlier, I'm a dick. Let's face it. Chris,
Okay,
you're a
so you're
pain in the
number
arse
4.
to live with. I've had you around. I don't want you again.
That's going to make December interesting, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah. Adam, I mean, you've got a mean streak. You really have. Yeah. And Duncan looks like Santa Claus, so everyone likes that. So.
Personality.
Yeah.
Personality, for fuck's sake. Personality, not looks.
Chris?
Oh, God.
There's a
This
sad
segment's
reality
annoying me
that
this
Santa
week.
Claus only comes once a year.
can confirm.
Duncan can confirm that, yes.
Right, let me get to my weird question just to cheer myself up.
Oh, because that
Right.
wasn't weird
Oh,
enough.
what, was that not the weird one?
No,
Oh.
no. Don't be silly.
By the way,
That's
hello,
about to
Disability Expo. Hope you're enjoying the show.
It's about to get proper weird now. This is the crown jewel until next episode. But right, we're strolling in the desert when suddenly Adam's chicken cauliflower meal he made makes us feel queasy. You run, roll behind a rock, and perch to go number 2. At this moment, a venomous snake bites between your inner thigh and ass cheek. Someone needs to suck out the venom. Who do you choose and why? Duncan, you're always up first for the weird.
Oh, fuck this.
So, I mean, it's inner thigh. It's like one tooth in each part, right? And there is a real danger of contact between the ball sack and someone's face as they're sucking out the poison.
Oh, right there. I'll show you on the Bulbasaur where it's
What
happening.
is that? It's a
Aloha-
fucking dog. What?
It's an Aloha Bulbasaur.
Okay.
Right.
He's got,
Who's
he's got a pocket for an arse.
who's sucking? Who's sucking?
I'm going to go for you because so far out of the 4 of us, you suck the most.
You're more likely to survive. Okay, let's go with Adam next. Who are you choosing to suck and why?
So, who is Adam Pearson, who's vindictive and has a mean streak? Who is he gonna make eat his ass in the desert? Simon Sampson! It's go time, baby!
What a delight. It'll be nicer than eating the cauliflower chicken meal you made.
Simon, do you spit or swallow?
That's what's coming out, baby. That's what's coming out.
Right, Simon. Who is sucking out the venom and why?
There's a few issues there. 1, the desert, there aren't really any rocks. 2, I can't feel my thigh anyway. I'm just saying, I'll let it go there. Just let it stay. It'll come out eventually. Squeeze it out. Can't feel it. Cut it out. Can't feel it. Nobody needs to suck it out. I get a knife. Take a chunk out.
It doesn't matter if you can't feel it. It's venom.
He wouldn't know.
His venom's going to kill you.
It's
No. In fact, yeah, you're right. Okay, he's dead. All right, that's it. Yeah. That's the fucking end of See You Next Tuesday.
We're free! We're free!
God's sake.
There's always one, and it's always him. Anyway,
it really is.
I'll be honest. I'm going to try to get this back on the rails. It just went off the rails really, really quickly, and I'm going to try and get it back on because I'm a competent presenter, apparently. It's good time for Dear Grumpy Gits, our reoccurring segment where people write in with their problems, woes, dilemmas. I can't stress this enough. Please stop sending us actual problems. We're not qualified in any way, shape, or form to solve actual problems. So just keep it as ridiculous as you can. I love you all, but I don't know anything about any cheap rates on mortgages or any of that bollocks. Now all that's out the way, Duncan, what have we got this week?
We have a letter from the United States this week. And I'll just get into it. So, dear Grumpy Gits, I had the most horrendous thing happen and I need advice. I was in my 20s. It was a very hot summer's day in Australia. Now, this isn't anyone I know. This just happens to be somebody who is American who is in Australia at the time. All I was wearing was a T-shirt and jeans, nothing else. No underwear either. I got a call that a friend was coming over, so I got on my old Kickstart 250 and rode down to the shops to buy some beer. I parked in front of the shop on the main street and got a case of beer, strapped onto the back of the seat. So in Australia they call them mocky straps, but the straps, the stretchy straps. I went to get on the bike and swung my leg over the carton. As I did this, my jeans ripped in half. I looked down, and I was now wearing 2 denim tubes connected by a belt. They had ripped completely from front to back. The only thing holding them together was the belt. In addition, my genitalia had flopped out against the petrol tank and were now laying in plain view and enjoying the sunshine. I looked up in horror. This was a busy main street. Somehow nobody had noticed yet, and so I covered myself up with one hand and tried to figure out what I could do. I decided to go home as soon as possible. But first I had to kickstart the bike, and you need 2 hands for that. I waited until some people passed and then stood up and luckily started the bike with a single kick. I then rode off slowly with one hand on my crotch, and the first turn came up about 100 meters down the road. This is right in front of the train station. When you're turning a bike, you cannot do it one-handed, so I took my hand off my crutch and turned. And it turned out that this day, several troops of brownies, or junior girl guides, were going on a trip somewhere. So there was about 50 little girls under the age of 12, and I rode past them with my genitals out and in the wind. And I rode past them with my genitals out and the wind in my hair. I'm not asking which hair was what he was referring to there. I got home quickly after that, and for the next few days checked the newspaper for any mention of mad cyclist flasher. But it looks like I got away with it. I've never been so embarrassed in my life. However do I live this down? Anonymous. I'm not surprised, Anonymous. Gentlemen, what are your thoughts?
It's you. I bet it's you, isn't it? There was a reason you left Australia, and it wasn't to meet your wife.
As my wife regularly assures me, they wouldn't have seen anything.
This is why I won't let anyone I know and love get on a motorbike. That and the whole death thing.
I say embrace the freedom.
Yeah, I don't think it's so much the freedom as the 50 girl guides.
That's an accident. That happens. I mean, when at my wedding, I had 2 best men, and they told about 6 naked stories about me over the years.
You had 2 best men. This is just typical Simon. Oh, I didn't have just one best man. I had 2. I had one more than everybody else.
Yeah.
I streaked in front of my father-in-law by accident. You know, it happens. You know, things. You know, I've torn my trousers jumping over a gate where everything fell out. Done that. You know, things like this happen. Live with it. You know, embrace it.
It doesn't just happen. You see,
your autobiography is either going to be the most interesting thing ever written or the biggest load of bullshit I've ever read in my life.
I can relate. I can relate to this because when I was taking my son to school, I got out the car and I bent over. I had jeans on. I bent over to sort out his straps and let him out for school. And at that moment, my jeans ripped at the back, and there were parents walking past. So
Were you
I had
wearing
to.
underwear though?
I was wearing underwear, but I mean, it still makes it quite difficult because if I've got a huge rip and you can see my my boxers, it was quite embarrassing. So I literally shut the door and slammed my back against the car so they couldn't see. And I had to flag over one of the parents that I sort of knew and said, "Would you mind taking Logan in for me? I've got to go somewhere." So, they took him in. I jumped back in the car and I drove off. But it was, I mean, his story's worse, a lot worse. But mine, I felt terrified.
It reminds me of a story from my early 20s when I was in a band. I was at my drummer's house, the drummer in my band. His sister was a nurse. I moved out of home very young in life. I was like 17 and I left home. And I got to that stage where I literally ran out of underwear and I'd freeballed it for the day. I'd gone to his house. I'd gone for a piss and I'd literally, as I'm zipping up, I trapped my foreskin in the zip.
You something about married it.
I'm like, Pete. And he's like, what? He's like, I'm running, he's knocking on the button. I'm like, dude, I can you get me to the hospital, please? And he was like, what? I said, I in the end, I had to confess, like, I'm sorry, I really trapped my foreskin in my zip. I'm really nagging. Oh, my sister's a nurse. Hang on, I'll go get her. I'm like, fucking no way. And I literally lathered the thing with soap and managed to get it out. It was just the worst moment. So that whole idea of freeballing and being exposed in that way, it's terrifying.
Do you think any of those girl guys got their nature badge for that? Why don't you cover it with the beer? Just like grab the beer between your thighs. It'll keep the cool from like the heat of the petrol tank.
I love that Simon, that Adam has the practical application to fix the problem. It makes me think he's been in this situation.
What I would have done is every shop in every small town in America has the American flag hanging outside. I would have just ripped one of those down and just you turn it into a little towel.
The problem is this is Australia.
Yeah.
There you are. Yeah.
Oh, and also that's a crime. Wiping your cock and balls on the American flag in America is absolutely a crime.
No, it's not. You're allowed to burn the American flag in America.
No, you're not, you maniac.
Yes, you are.
That's arson. That's arson. That's like saying, see set another on fire. Like,
can Jeff fact check that so we can find out who's
let's
right?
Let's get that up on the screen.
They may not like it, but as in protest, people used to burn the American flag to protest the freedom of speech and freedom of democracy. They still do. You are allowed to burn the American flag. You're under freedom of democracy.
I would have fashioned some sort of nappy sort of thing with the two legs. I reckon you could have. It would have looked shit, but you could have protected your modesty if you'd have wrapped it round a few times.
Well, I think he needed to genuinely go the Australian ingenuity route because he had a crate of beer. That's a cardboard box that can easily be turned into a SpongeBob.
He could have had a cardboard underpants, couldn't he?
Just
one side, just tucked under.
Turn your t-shirt into some trousers, some shorts. Did
he have a t-shirt?
It doesn't say in the email. The details are sketchy on there.
Can I also point out that a t-shirt also had a cracking great hole in the bottom where the socks would then be. That idea shows little understanding of what a t-shirt is and how it works.
He could have filtered the legs through it so it didn't look
Yeah.
so obvious.
It's still like, I'm with Adam. That just leaves a gaping hole. Just for like, it was almost like, let's focus on something. Right in the middle.
We were a disability podcast once upon a time. I miss those days.
And that is Dear Grumpy Gits for this week.
Fantastic. Thank you, Duncan. And to the gentleman that wrote in with that, may God have mercy on your soul. We got interviews, don't we, Duncan? We got interviews. We sat down with a musician lady person who was really good. And it was great. Duncan, tell everyone about musician lady person.
Musician lady person, which is her official working title. We sat down, Adam and I got to get together with Rachel Mason. So Rachel Mason is an amazing singer, songwriter, musician. She collaborates with loads of different artists all the time. Recently won a Cannes Award for a short film that she contributed to musically with an amazing song. And we actually got her to perform the song live in the interview, which is just phenomenal. So yeah, this is Rachel Mason with Adam and myself in the past.
Take it away. Past us in 3, 2, 1.
Yep, thanks, Adam. And here we are. We are with the amazing Rachel Walker Mason. Rachel, how are you?
I'm really well, thanks. All the better for seeing you guys, though.
Oh, stop it. Yeah. Some of you may recognize Rachel. We've had Rachel on when we were the Grumpy Dads, when it was just Chris and I. We had Rachel on for a whole episode. But lots has been happening in your life recently, Rachel, and that's obviously led to, I thought, we've got to get you back on. I mean, where are things at with you? What are you doing at the moment?
Loads of songwriting. I think it was quite early in lockdown, wasn't it, last time I spoke to you?
It was.
I was writing quite a bit, but now I'm just doing tons of songwriting with different artists, and I've written a song that was in a short film, which is seems to be doing quite well.
And Rachel is going to do a live performance of that song later on, so stick around for that, because that's going to be epic. But I mean, that song, you've won like a shed load of awards. That you won the Cannes Best Song.
Yeah, it was a bit surprising. Yeah, there's a lot of movie awards and things, especially for short films, because there are so many made now. This song happens to just fit into that category really well. So it's a song I wrote with my co-writer Nina. We wrote it for a mental health EP that we wrote the first day we ever wrote together, and it's called Drown Without Water. Yeah. And it was kind of about my own struggles with postnatal depression after my children were born. Through having postnatal depression, and I wrote a book about it and things, I got to know.
This book, I've got to say.
Oh, thank you. You did a lovely quote for it. You're like on the back. You got a little bit on the back cover.
Yeah, that's my claim to fame now. I did the quote for Rachel Walker Mason's book.
And it's through that I got to know so many other parents who have really struggled, and they were so lovely and open about their struggles. And so I wrote this book with all their stories in it. They gave me permission to.
That's what I loved. You wrote the book, and it wasn't. There's a tendency for a lot of people. It can be kind of self-serving, and that's not necessarily a bad thing. It's important to talk about, and like I said, but what you did was drawing a whole community. So it wasn't just one person's experience. It was a group of people's shared experience. And reading it as a bloke, it really hit me, because obviously, my wife had fairly severe postnatal depression, and it was so refreshing to read these. Like, there are moments you're kind of giggling at some of the things it said, but for a lot of it, you're just like, I'm not crying, you're crying.
Yeah. Stages. A lot of mums sat on the toilet and read it, because that was their only downtime when their kids were right.
Put Candy Crush down for a few minutes, start reading. Yeah.
I really wanted to have dads featured in it as well, because postnatal depression in dads is not very often talked about, because it sounds like it should only be women, because they're the ones that gave birth and things. But it's actually, particularly during COVID, it really rose, because people were isolated and they weren't getting as many visits from the nurses and things. It was brutal. It was really hard. And there's a chap from Bristol called Mark Williams who does a huge amount for dads' mental health stuff. And he so kindly gave me his story. So that's in the book. And he, at the time, he'd written a book called Daddy Blues, which is amazing. And I read that, and he was so open about his experience and his wife's experience and things. And then a filmmaker she's an actress, she's also a doctor. She's one of those people who's good at everything.
I hate people like that.
I know.
One of my friends also won an award at Cannes, and she's just insanely good at everything. And I'm like, oh, I love you to bits, but screw you.
Yeah, like, I really kind of hate you. And like, yeah, so she's Dr. Pravinda Sherhill. So she was on Coronation Street. She played a doctor on Coronation Street as well. She writes, she acts. She's a proper doctor, like flipping that woman could, give the rest of us a chance to be good at something. And so she'd written the screenplay based on Mark's book. And so Mark and I were in touch about various mental health things at the time. And so I got put in touch with Pravinda, and she really loved Drown Without Water and put that into the film in a massive chunk. It's not just a little few seconds. It's
a remarkable song. The song itself is really... There's a wonderful quote I love, and it's the music takes words to a place that words can't go alone. And you really felt that with this song. It's a very melancholy feel to it. It's got a beautiful sort of softness, but you really feel the words through the music. They complement each other so well.
Thank you. So that's my son crying in the background about not liking his dinner. My
life as a parent.
Yeah, exactly. Like they're normally in here going up with the piano. I'm like, go away.
Yeah. It's so fitting. I mean, we literally a few days ago we've had World Mental Health Day.
Mm-hmm.
And I think there are more stories coming. I think following lockdowns and COVID and all that kind of stuff, the prevalence and the incidence of depression has increased, obviously, because people aren't getting that necessary social interaction or haven't been getting that social interaction. But it's come out so much more. But I think in some really nice ways as well, things like that, like people telling their stories and kind of taking the stigma away from, especially, I'll say for guys particularly, I think, because there's that, it's wrong, but it's that thing of, you can't be vulnerable. You got to be, you're a man.
Yeah.
Please don't cry. Kind of bollocks.
It's that Andrew Tate toxic masculinity.
Yes.
Isn't it?
You love Andrew Tate.
That makes us polarize our emotions. Like men will look at how women behave and think, well, a man is the opposite of a woman, so I need to behave in the opposite way to that. And it's a really dangerous mindset to get into. Do men and women or mothers and fathers experience postnatal depression differently, or is it a very similar experience?
I think it's a very similar, very shared experience. And often it's a particularly traumatic birth because the father also watches the horror of the birth being a bit of a disaster. It can be horrible to watch your partner go through that. It's like, it's awful. It's like watching a car crash in slow motion. So I think it's actually very similar. Yeah, there's more of a stigma for dads to struggle because the dad wasn't the one who actually pushed the baby out of them. The dad wasn't the one leading the table, but he was there watching the person he loves most in the world giving birth to their child, and it being a really stressful, frightening experience. And I think particularly during lockdown, because a lot of dads weren't allowed to even be in the room when the baby was born. It was
hear it all secondhand. Yeah.
A comedian friend of mine who shall remain nameless describes watching childbirth as watching your favourite pub burn down.
I've heard that. I was like, yeah, don't go down the business end.
My daughter's birth was traumatic like that. And you do feel like it was almost a funny situation. It wasn't funny for my wife, but it was that thing of they were going to get forceps. Turns out they didn't have them in the birthing room we were in. And as they went and got forceps, Tracy threw up. And the pressure from vomiting, Sienna came out like a baseball. They needed a catcher's mitt to get her. It was that kind of a situation.
Oh my goodness!
It was it led to lots of trauma because obviously it was tearing and all that kind of. But it really was. It is really traumatic being the dad in there in that situation, and you feel the responsibility to be calm, and you repress a lot. So I'm guessing a part of that is that actually it has to come out one way or another. You can't keep repressing that.
Yeah.
I remember crying, and it was a beautiful moment. I'm holding my daughter, who back then was very cute, lovely, and sat in my arm.
Lovely. I love your daughter.
She's gorgeous. I know. I've got to get the tower in the garden finished because she's getting that age. But she's got short hair as well. Bonus.
That's another story for another day.
I'm sure social services don't mind. But it is traumatic, and you do feel it. And I mean, what sort of response has the book had for guides who've read it?
Yeah, quite a lot of dads have read it. And what's really lovely is people message me kind of now, and it's like a couple of years old, isn't it? Was it 2020 it came out? I can't remember now. I think it was. That when people have babies, they say, "Oh yeah, I brought that book for my husband," or "I just bought it and I read it." So yeah, the response has been amazing, and a lot of people have said that their families have read it. Generations ago, it wasn't really talked about. People weren't, postnatal depression wasn't a thing. Wasn't they just said, "Oh, you had a bit of a sad time after the baby was born or something," and it was like, no, it's probably a serious mental health condition.
Or just you'll get over it. Just shut up and put up. Basically, the whole attitude was rife.
It's strange one. I had a friend who, when she had her daughter, I was near where she lived with work, and I was like, "Hey, I'm in the area. Do you want to go get dinner or something for old time's sake?" And she's just gone to ground. And eventually, she reached out and went, "Hey, sorry, been a bit of a rough few months." And she was just like, and retrospectively, she's like, "I just thought I was a bad mum because I didn't like the kids that much." And then it turns out it was postnatal depression. And now I think my kid's great.
It's a huge guilt cycle that goes with it, isn't it? Because you feel like I need to reach out for help, but then I'm going to get judged for what I'm feeling. I feel awful about myself because of the way I'm feeling. Other people are going to feel awful about me because of the way I'm feeling. Yeah. And so you get trapped in this sort of prison of judgment that really isn't there now. Hopefully, I mean, that's the point, isn't it? I think in the wider spectrum of things as well. I mean, depression is like that, isn't it? There's no people. I think we expect everything to have a logic and a rhyme and a reason to it, but something like depression. I mean, I went through depression 15 years ago now. Back when I was living in Australia, I spoke about it on my channel recently, but it's part of World Mental Health Day. But it's one of those things that there's no logic to it. It doesn't have a rhyme or reason, and you get the whole two voices thing often. You're better than this. You're not. Yes, you are. No, you're not. And sadly, there's the devil that seems to grow the most in that time, speaking in your ear.
The old black dog. Like I have days where I wake up and the black dog is very much there, and you've got to kind of almost try and talk yourself out of it. And I think I'm at the point now where I don't try and talk myself out of it. I just acknowledge, okay, today is one of those days, and that's okay. It's okay not to be okay. Tomorrow is going to be better, and you roll with it, because the sort of like anxiety that comes with trying to fight against depression is sometimes worse than the actual feeling of either uselessness or helplessness.
There's a beautiful synergy in all this, though, that you wrote that book. You've got this guy's story in there. That's been turned into a short film. And then your song is accompanying. What's next for you at the moment? So, I mean, it's not just a Drown Without Water that's won awards. There's been a bunch of other songs that you've been getting loads of awards for, some gold records behind you. What's happening next?
Well, my best friend made me do it. I'm writing a musical because my best friend made me.
Is that what you're going to musical? My best friend made me do it.
Yeah. Yes, so I'm writing a musical and Drown Without Water is in the musical. My best friend Abby and I, we've been friends since school, and we're both musical theatre singing teachers as well in the rest of what we do in normal life. And we go up to London and back every now and again for research trips to see musicals,
Research, yeah, of course. Adam and I had a creative meeting last week in London, which involved German beer and pretzels. It was fantastic, and we did loads.
Yeah.
And like not like the little shitty things that come in pack, like size of a baby's head.
It's just this joint. We've only dubbed it that so we can charge the beers back to the Grumpy Gits. Yeah. So the music, what's the musical focused on?
So it's about women, basically. So there's loads of musicals on, and a lot of them are fantastic. Some are a bit less good. I'm not going to name them. But before I start getting hate mail from people, banished from the musical theatre world. Most of them are written by men. There's fewer female writers. So they're mostly written by men and from a man's perspective. And the women in it are often love interests or wannabe love interests. Like Les Mis, it's like, Eponine doesn't even get to be the love interest. She's like, oh, I really fancy him. I'm like, well, then she dies. It's not about them. It's about the man, and the women are just sort of also there. And I thought, I'd really like to write something where it's from the perspective of women. And if there's any men in it, they're kind of just there to move the story along. It's not about them. So, and what I've done is, because I love collaborating, that's my favourite thing. I love collaborative writing. And so this musical is written with lots of different female songwriters. So it's not just me, it's not just my musical, it's all of ours. So they're from all over different styles of music. So each character has a different style of genre of music.
There better be some rock in there, or I'm going to be really annoyed.
And there's some rock. I was like, if there's not, I'm a grunge girl. I'm like...
Exactly.
No.
Rachel and I, way back when, first bonded over a shared love of Chris Cornell.
Oh, I love Chris Cornell. It's like Chris Cornell, Soundgarden, audio slave fan. Is there any country and western in there? Because Duncan loves country and western.
Yeah, there is a country song. It's called "Pretty Good for a Girl."
That sounds like a country song.
It does.
In hospital a few weeks ago when I had my ulcer, they said, "Have you got any allergies?" And I just said, "Country and western." And she laughed.
That's what we're going to say you to put you to sleep. Like, no.
That, or it's purgatory on my way to hell for whatever sins that I committed before my ulcer. It was,
I'll dedicate that one to you.
Oh, good. Yeah, great. Thank you. I'm going to kill you, Adam. I want to reel this back into your writing and all this kind of stuff. And I want to ask the question, for you, if someone was to come to you and say, I'm really struggling with postnatal depression, where would you direct them?
I would probably say Pandas, which is they were a charity that really helped me a lot, actually. And they have helplines where you can call up, and often it's people who have similarly struggled who will take your call, and they're amazing. They're really supportive. There's quite a lot. There's one called Mothers for Mothers, which is in Bristol, which is also amazing. And Maria, who runs that, her story is a really tragic one, but it's in my book. It's about losing a baby and then like all the things that came with it. So she's done something incredible with all that sorrow. But yeah, Pandas are, I would probably say, are the best one for that. Sometimes my students come and they're really struggling with depression and things, and so I often say, well, go, make an appointment with the doctor. It's not as scary as you think. They're not going to judge you. They just figure out what support you need, and then they can give you that support. They're not going to tell you that, just to man up or anything.
We will put links in the description to all that. We will also put links to Rachel's book and to her Spotify, so you can go and listen. But before we do that, we are going to have a wonderful rendition of Drown Without Water from Rachel. So, Rachel.
So this is the first time I've played it live with piano, because normally Nina is playing guitar for me in this song.
It's a guitar piece.
So nervous. I guess it's 'cause I don't know just how deep you'll go below the surface, so I'll find it in the damage and dust. There's plenty of shipwrecks and shallows, but the depths hide the darkest of days. The light shines off of the gallows I've lost. Isn't real, isn't true anyways. Only I could drown without water. I could fall from rock bottom, even if I knew you were there. I don't know if I'll be nervous if I let you into the waves. I've not made it easy on purpose to see if you'll fight, if you'll swim, if you'll stay. I can't be blamed if you choose to jump in of your own accord. The sirens in action was hiding and lurking. I match my own fears as they're yours. Only I could drown without water, softly cry, gasping for air. And only I could fall from rock bottom, even if I knew you were there. And you could be the best, be the worst, be the right one. I could be the best, be the worst, and be the right one. It's not right, and only I could drown without water, softly cry, gasping for air. And only I could fall from rock bottom, even if I knew you were there.
That was magic. Goosebumps.
Aww.
Rachel, I want to say a huge thank you for that, but also for joining us today. It's always such a pleasure to talk to you.
Aww.
The work you're doing and the advocacy that you do, I think, is just astonishing. So I huge thank you.
Oh, thank you. I'm so honoured to be on your show. I love your show. It's my favourite podcast because it's so funny as well.
We will put all of Rachel's links in the description, as I say, and that's to her book, to the charities, but also to her Spotify and YouTube and all that kind of stuff. We'll all be there. Go and check it out because her music's astonishing and it's beautiful, just like that song was. Thank you so much, Rachel.
Thank you.
We will head back over to the main podcast and back to Adam when we do the podcast.
And there we go. Thank you very much for that, Rachel. A privilege to sit down and talk to you. And that live performance, I mean, originally I suggested it as a way to circumvent copyright things on the YouTube, but I'm so glad we did it, Duncan. So glad we did it.
I don't know about you. I genuinely got goosebumps through that. It was just, her voice is astonishing. And what a song. The lyrics really hit me. It was amazing.
Anyway, carrying on. I don't know if any of you have been watching the news as of late, but it's not been fun. Fun fact, by the time you're watching this, 1 in 8 people would have had a go at being Prime Minister. True story. True story.
We've had 4 chancellors in 5 months.
So I thought, in the interest of mental health and raising everyone's spirits, we'd have a segment of just good news. And when I think good news, I think Chris Lee Smith. Chris Lee Smith, give us the good news.
Yeah, I think we got confused about this segment because it's not all good news.
Oh. You said it was all going to be good news.
You said good news.
I said
I've got good news. I'm up for an award. I'm going to a ceremony next week. On Thursday. This Thursday coming.
Oh, tell us about that, Duncan. Tell us about that.
Where's my segment?
You ruined it.
I've still got the news stories.
Yeah, but this is more important now. Duncan, tell us about your award ceremony.
Fuck's sake. Go on, tell us about your fucking thing. Go on.
Some kind soul out there has nominated me for a Make a Difference award with the BBC, so I'm going to a ceremony on Thursday to see if I've won.
And where is the ceremony?
It's at Creeley. It's a fun park. So
you're going to a fun park.
It's a fun park, but I don't get to go on any rides.
Are you sure that's a good idea? Well, you don't know what happened last time you went to a fun park.
Are you thinking of a different fun park, Adam? Are you thinking of something really rude and disgusting?
We get to use the tumbleweed again.
You nearly died at fucking Buttons or whatever it was.
Buttons is a holiday park. That's not a fun park. Okay.
Did you not have fun? Fucking hell.
I'm glad we bypassed my new segments now.
I apologise.
No one got that. Literally. Everyone else just sat there staring at the camera, waiting for a punchline that was never to come.
I've never felt... I've never felt more like a fucking Tory than I do right now.
And our elections for the next host for the Grumpy Gits is coming up.
I will get my coat. Anyway, where were we? Chris, news.
Yes.
Please get me the hell out of the hole.
I'm going to want your opinions on these as well. Very, very short. New York City restaurateur Keith McNally called James Corden a tiny cretin of a man in an explosive Instagram post. Now, the reason he did this is because he was abusive to the waitstaff, and apparently he's done this quite a lot. What are our thoughts on James Corden? Because I think he is a twat.
I was going to say, James Corden's a twat. Who knew? Oh, what's that? Most of America. Britain's loss, to quote Stuart Lee, Britain's loss is America's loss.
Well, this is just power going through his head. It's just getting ridiculous, isn't it? He's using like, I'm the James Corden now. I get what I want, and it's just backfired completely. You don't piss off New York restaurants. I know that. I'm disabled, and they've got shit access, and I still don't piss them off.
It must be 7 years ago now. Patrick Stewart was taking the piss out of James Corden on stage, and it backfired on Patrick Stewart horrifically. I think that needs to come back and be. Actually, he was spot on. Patrick Stewart, you had it.
I don't think there's anybody on the planet that is more likely to use the phrase "Do you know who I am?" than James Corden.
No, the best one. I don't know if you remember. He was doing Anton Deck, and he got pranked by Anton Deck in America. And he turned around to the security guard and went, "Don't you know who I am? My picture is on the side of the building." And I'm thinking, you don't need to say that. You just need to say, "Go and get security. They know who I am. They'll let you in." You know, you don't need to go, "My picture is on the side of the building." I was like, oh God.
I just think he's distinctly unremarkable at everything he does. And there'll be people going, "Oh, what if he listens to this?" He won't listen to this. That'd be like a dog listening to classical music. It would just be way above him.
Isn't that what HMV was built on, Simon?
So, yeah, I am not at all surprised. And I hope he gets banned from a lot more restaurants. And in the end, it's just a video of him crying in a Wendy's.
So, news segment number 2. Why nobody should be using the thumb up emoji in 2022, and the 10 symbols only old people use that have Gen Z rolling their eyes. What do we think about people using thumbs up? Apparently they take offense to it. They think it's patronizing. Gen Z do.
Why is it? Who, what? Yeah. Who's got 2 thumbs and doesn't give a shit? Simon. What do we think about this? Thumbs up.
Yeah, I do it all the time.
You said something Gen Z. What's Gen Z?
Gen Z is
Z. Gen Z in England.
I don't know what that is.
You don't know? Oh, mate.
Oh, God.
What?
Fucking hell.
Go back to listening to Blue.
What?
I'm sure Steps made a song about this. Gen
I
Z
can
is
take an educated guess.
Go on, let's hear your educated desk.
Generation X followed by Generation Y, and now we have Gen Z, which is the sort of current generation up and coming.
Okay. Yeah, but they take offence to everything at the moment. They're pouring out milk for the fun of it, even though they took a bus and they're protesting against oil. I mean, get a life.
Okay, right.
You can reach Simon Sansom on Twitter at Simon Sansom.
Please do. I'm going to make a few accounts.
I'm sorry. They go into Marks and Spencer's, they pour out the milk and say, "I'm going to protest against oil." And the way they got there is by bus, by train, by car, by taxi. Which all use oil. I mean, talk about being hypocritical.
Do you want to save that bit for when we actually discuss it? For fuck's sake, you ruined it. Right.
Yeah.
The final one, which isn't funny at all. Joe Frost put on Instagram. Today, in the 21st century, people want to banish the word naughty. They say it is a negative word to describe a child's behavior, yet we want to desperately label our children ADD, ADHD, ODD, and every other ABCD. I can't think of anybody more irrelevant than Joe Frost. I
used to sit there watching Super Nanny and I remember one night trying to put my daughter to sleep and doing the whole Super Nanny into bed, night, then back quietly. 63 times I counted trying to do this. She has no fucking idea what it's like raising a Sen kid and what it's like for a Sen kid being raised. She can put all the structures and bullshit up that she likes. She's just absolutely missing the mark. Absolutely. Can't stand her. And I'll go on record for that. You can tweet me on that one.
Yep, she's dead. She's dead wrong. Like we had none of that at Pearson Towers when I was young. None of this. Oh, if you're good, you get a reward. It was like, no, if you're good, you can fucking live in my house. And I was like, understood, Mom. Understood. Dad, we had this conversation. So yeah, and the idea that we like to use naughty to refer to our child's behaviour. Not in my relationship, me and the missus don't. I never gone, "Oh, you're so naughty," referring to like her mischievous behaviour in the school playground. Oh no. And if we could not say her name this episode, that'd really help me out.
Yeah, we didn't have the naughty step. We got a slap around the face and got sent to bed.
Slap around the face?
Yeah.
The ongoing story of Simon Sansom's personality is becoming more and more clear.
From my generation, I got a slap on the arse and told to go to bed, but I never got slapped around the face.
I've got 3 sisters. They used to slap me all the time.
That's siblings. That's different.
That's not parents. There's a subtle difference here.
Yeah.
When I was young, if you misbehaved, someone threw a flip-flop at your head. They threw a flip-flop at you. And they'd be like, stop doing what you're doing, you little scalawag. Don't make me come down there and kick your head in. No, get the fuck out of here. Go what you're
You know
wrong.
what?
Yeah.
I will go on record as saying the whole Joe Frost Super Nanny bollocks is ABA. And if you want to look at ABA, it's basically dog training for neurodivergent people. And it needs to end. It does more damage than good. And she's an absolute scourge on the face of the earth.
I think she's well aware that that this is all real, but I think she can't accept it because it would mean her career's over.
That's it.
And that makes her scum. It really does.
It
I've
makes
got
it
no
worse
time.
than if she'd just gone, holy crap, maybe I made some mistakes.
She could have rebranded herself. She could have rebranded herself doing it this way, and delved into the conditions and tried to help in a different way. But no, she's doubled down on this. Was it 90s that she did this stupid super nanny?
Late
terrorising kids?
90s, late 90s, early 2000s. She could have, like you say, re-educated herself, done a bit of retraining. But no, she's doubled down, and she's nothing more than a glorified fucking dog trainer. I put her on the same level as Cesar Milano.
Yeah, Cesar Milan.
Exactly. I mean, really, when was the last time she was relevant? And this is all about, I want to make myself a bit more famous again.
Well, then, Joe, if you want to be famous, kill a prostitute. Like, don't make kids suffer for your fragile ego.
Just go kill a woman.
And if she hears this and comes at me, I just like to remind her that I was a runner on Series 4 and I know a lot.
Well, that's the end of the new segment.
Excellent. End it with blackmail.
Not blackmail, just I found it on nudge in the right direction.
Earlier this month, we celebrated World Cerebral Palsy Day with a very exciting announcement. Comedian, Britain's Got Talent finalist and CP warrior Eva Abley took to our social channels to share the news that she would be opening Disability Expo alongside Baroness Tanny Gray-Thompson. Eva will also be treating us to performances on both days of the event, as well as talking on our People's panel. Joining Eva on the People's panel is Christina Warner. Christina is a family and animal protection barrister and award-winning advocate and campaigner. Christina also has a genetic condition called Stargardt disease that causes sight loss. For World Sight Day, she shared with us 3 common misconceptions around sight loss. Christina is passionate about sharing the message that you don't need to have sight to have vision. We have also been making some exciting partnerships behind the scenes. Hidden Disabilities Sunflower are now working with us as an official campaigns partner. The Hidden Disabilities Sunflower is a globally recognised symbol for non-visible disabilities. Their CEO, Paul White, who was an integral part of the creation of the scheme, will also be joining our People's Panel speakers. We are also excited to be working with the PDA Society as our charity partners. They provide information, support and training about PDA, or pathological demand avoidance, for individuals, families and professionals, directly supporting around 3,000 people each year. They aim to increase acceptance and understanding of a PDA profile and to improve outcomes for individuals and families. So don't forget to register your free ticket for Disability Expo and join the I Matter movement on our socials today. Back to the Grumpy Gits.
So coming up now, we've got another interview, and I've only just done the reading around this, so I can only imagine how this interview must have been with Gurdas. Duncan, talk us through it.
Back in June of this year, Gurdas' father was attacked in the streets of Manchester because his attacker apparently believed that Gurdas had accidentally brushed up against his girlfriend. And life-changing injuries and the effect on the whole family later. He's been jailed for 3 years. And originally Chris and I were supposed to interview. Unfortunately, Chris was really ill that day. So I took the interview, and I spoke to Gurdas, and he sort of gave his side of the story and what the impact's been like for him, seeing his father, who genuinely seems like one of the nicest men on earth and the most peaceful, goodwill based men on earth, was put in this position. And it's heartbreaking, and it's heartbreaking that our world has come to this, that this is just sort of almost commonplace now and accepted. So yeah, this was the interview I had with Gurdas. Thanks, Adam. And yes, I am here with the fantastic Gurdas. Gurdas, how are you today, my man?
I'm good, thank you. I've had clinics this morning, and I'll be back in the hospital this afternoon.
So yeah, you're a medical student. You're very close to finishing.
Yeah, so I'm a final year. We don't have a gap between penultimate and final year, so we went straight through, and I've got 3 months left.
So some of you may have seen in the news the attack in Manchester on Gurdas's father and the ramifications that's had. The individual involved was sentenced. He's got 3 years in jail. Before we get onto that side of it, I mean, can you give us a bit of background on your father and your life in the UK?
My father came to this country approximately about 40 years ago. He came because he was helping with the Sikh prayers. They do a lot of tours where they teach Sikhs about different values, but also about different parts of the prayers. And my dad's trained as a priest. He actually trained with the Indian Army growing up as well. But he's had all sorts of parts of his life. Just shows testament to his being. So when he was growing up, his uncle and aunt couldn't have children. So he actually went to live with them rather his parents, so that they had support whilst they were growing as well. And then he came to this country and met my mum, who was here. So her parents actually came after World War II, and they came as part of the drive to pick up jobs that soldiers used to have. And we know that Sikhs were a massive part of World War II as well, in terms of we have a lot of family who fought in World War II as well.
People forget that, don't they? People see this sort of divide, and it's often based on things that they will blame on history. But actually, like you say, the Sikhs were so involved in World War II and actually contributed to the freedoms that we have today. And your dad was a part of that.
Sikhs were actually the second biggest religion on our side for the World War II. So we've fought for this country, and we always will. My sister's a teacher. My other sister works in a hospital. I'm training to be a doctor. My mum was a pharmacy technician as well, and she works and heads up the vaccination centres in Manchester. All of us are very giving people, and we've all gone into careers where we want to educate and inspire and help save the lives of everybody in this country as well.
So you were telling me about what a giving and incredibly graceful man your father is.
My dad is peaceful to the core. He doesn't get into arguments. He's the type of person who lets it go. And so when we were thinking of careers, he was very much the type of person who was go into careers that will help people. And so we all took that on board through his inspiration and being broken like this, through literally a case of mistaken identity. It makes you lose faith in the entire world, to be honest.
What actually happened on that day? What happened to your dad?
On the 23rd of June, at 6:25 p.m, which for most of us is a very busy time, where pubs were really alert and active. Loads of people were in Manchester city centre. My dad was taking the same route home that he's taken for about 30 years. He was walking his normal route down the busiest street. So Tib Street's one of the busiest streets. Oldham Street is one of the busiest. And these are full with pubs. And essentially this man has walked past another man and his girlfriend, and he's brushed past her.
So it's another man?
Yeah.
He's the one who's brushed past and made contact with this guy's girlfriend.
My dad was literally behind this other man, didn't know either of them. And the man who pushed past her didn't know the couple either. And this girlfriend has turned around to her boyfriend and said, "That man hit me," and speaking and gesturing at my dad. Now, my dad's just walking past, and then this boyfriend basically tries to engage with my dad and essentially tries to pursue him, because my dad's like, "Look, I'm so sorry. I think you've got the wrong person. trying to basically get away from him because this guy is getting really aggressive. This guy just basically decides to pursue my dad for quite a lengthy amount of time across a number of streets in Manchester. And then he catches up to my dad. My dad's trying to get away, and he basically lands 2 punches, one to the side of the head, which is really weak. So my dad was completely blown backwards.
That's the temple area, yeah.
Exactly, but it's also where like we have our turbans as well. And then my dad's fallen quite viciously to the floor, and he, rather than just leaving it there, he's grabbed my dad by the collar and knocked him into the eye as well. My dad obviously like was really injured, so there was like a pool of blood around him, and this man, as if he's literally just gone to the shops to buy chewing gum, has come out of it and just walked off. And then he's proceeded to just link up with his girlfriend again, and then they've just gone partying.
This has happened, and they've just gone on to, we're just going to have the rest of the night, and they, like you say, partying, drinking, having fun.
But even people in fights, like you see fights, I've seen the aftermaths of them in IT, people come in and they're completely shell-shocked. Even the people that have been the attackers, they're like completely blown backwards. This man treated it as if like it was a normal thing to do. It's disgusting that he just proceeded to have a completely normal night.
He says he felt some regret, doesn't he?
He does, and
his actions don't reflect it.
I think the judge even saw right through that, as in her sentencing. She literally says, "You've written me a letter trying to beg for reprieve," essentially. And she said, "You, in this letter, you have quickly turned this on yourself. You don't care about the man you've affected at all. All you care about is how this is going to affect your life from now on. So I think you fully are responsible for this."
You hear the story, and it's one of those things that shocks you, because we're supposed to live in a country that is safe and is protective. You guys, you grew up, I guess, experiencing racism on probably a daily basis. Chatting before, you were saying that you'd often get your turban knocked off and stuff like that by people. It sickens me that we're in a country that allows this to continue. As you say, I'm really glad that the judge recognised that. What I struggle with is the judge has given a 3-year sentence, and that's the full sentence. That's not time off for good behaviour, whatever. So he could be paroled in, a year? I
think this is why we're quite disgusted, to be honest, and confused, because initially this man was prosecuted under a Section 18.
What's Section 18?
So Section 18 is where you've caused grievous bodily harm with intent. And I think all of us on the CCTV footage saw that he intended to hurt my dad.
I was going to say, I think even in a situation like this, there's a murder aspect to it, because you've taken the life that someone has. And yes, there's life there still, but it's in a split second. Life's been completely rewritten to something that's a lot more challenging and a lot harder. What's he experiencing at the moment?
It's been really tough. So when this first happened, we didn't know that he was going to survive. So as I said, like, he was lying in a pool of blood, and we have like a scale in medicine, and everyone's a 15, and someone that's dead is a 3, and you start to have emergency procedures when someone gets to an 8. And my dad was a 5, which means that he couldn't move properly. He just barely felt pain, and his eyes were completely closed. It was just absolutely grueling just to even hear that. The first 6 weeks were really hard in terms of we couldn't really live any day without thinking about, is he going to die today? It was really hard in terms of he couldn't talk, he couldn't move, he couldn't open his eyes. His oxygen depleted massively, which means that his brain was being starved of oxygen as well. He had all sorts of bleeds. His brain started to swell, which meant that they had to cut a hole into his eye just to allow the pressure to lower so that he'd actually survive. They had to make cuts into his skull as well, just so that they could monitor the pressure into his brain. And then he's completely lost all right-sided function, so he can't really move it properly at all without being in severe amounts of pain. Even when we go to the hospital now, he still says to us, "I've got so much pain in his right side." And one thing that I've not said is he can't speak English anymore. So because of the amount of bleeds and where they've happened in his brain, his language center has been completely affected, so he can't remember
brain
English.
Damage there. created by this.
Exactly.
And so it's even more isolating for him, I'm guessing. Like,
definitely, as in, like, whenever we went to the hospital, like, we know it's actually really hard. As in, I've had patients even recently that find it really scary to ask for pain medication that they're entitled to, but he can't actually ask for things because he can't speak English anymore, because when traumatic head injuries happen, you default to your mother tongue, and his mother tongue isn't English. His recovery's been really hard in terms of he's been really determined, but I think he doesn't really fully understand his whole constraints because he is quite confused at the moment as well. So he doesn't really understand a lot of things. So he thought he'd just fallen by himself. And then when we told him that he'd actually been hurt, he got really emotional and didn't understand why someone would hit him.
And it was completely unjustified and out of the blue anyway. So you don't even have that cognitive link as to what's occurred.
There's a lot of aspects to this in terms of even being treated. So when we first arrived at the hospital, we didn't know what to expect. My mum having to identify someone and her being scared that she's going to, next thing you know, have to identify a dead body.
That's what you got straight away, isn't it? If you're going to identify someone because you're identifying a dead body.
Exactly, because you assume that someone that has to be identified can't identify themselves. His turban was completely covered in blood and just left on the floor next to his bedside. When it first
That's
happened.
really significant, religious consequences for you guys too, doesn't it?
It's like putting like the Queen's or the King's crown on the floor, as in it's just not something you do. Like, we as Sikhs see our turbans as crowns. So there's something that we're really proud of. And for someone to take it off and just put it into a plastic bag on the floor covered in blood was just really upsetting. Since he's been in hospital, just because of the pressures on the NHS at the moment as well, he's caught a whole host of infections.
I want to ask, yesterday my wife pointed out an article to me that was showing the wait in our local hospital for A&E services was 52 hours. You've got a really unique perspective in that you are becoming a doctor, very soon to be a doctor. You've worked in these wards, you've worked in the NHS, you've been there saving other people's lives. What needs to be done to rescue this situation? Because it feels to me like there's like a consistent, like we say, knockback of these different things. What needs to be done that's going to solve the issues that we're facing with the NHS and these huge delays, and people are dying?
I think there's just huge underfunding, to be honest. It's in, like, he had to be constrained to that hospital because there wasn't enough funding in other hospitals. And although, like, even just on the wards recently, there's meant to be 6 people, like the nurses to take care of all of the people in really severe conditions on my dad's bay, for example, there were only 2 because there wasn't enough funding. So my dad was left alone for quite a lot of the time. I think with the NHS at the moment, it's so pressurized that even basic things, making sure every area is completely clean, isn't possible at the moment. So, like, during COVID, like, a lot of us struggled to even get masks. So for the first 2 waves of COVID, I didn't have a mask at all, apart from the basic ones. And when I was on, like, COVID positive wards, I just had to wear, like, a normal mask, knowing that it wouldn't offend me. But I think all of this just comes very much from the government, to be honest. The Crown Prosecution Service itself is hugely underfunded, and that's why a lot of these cases get undervalued, essentially. All of the people that are working in these hospitals are amazing people, but everyone's just so burned out.
With your father, bringing it back to everything that's gone on, what's his condition like now? So
his condition now is quite okay for his what's happened, as in, I think he's made leaps and bounds. So a lot of the consultants said, we don't think he's probably going to walk again, but he's walking with a frame now. He falls quite often just because he's so determined to come home. He's got a lot of loneliness. Him not being at home doesn't feel right for him.
What really comes across to me, and we're people at different parts of the country, different races, different beliefs, but we're human and we share a humanity. And what's happened is an affront to humanity to me.
That's literally what I said in court. As in my impact statement, I literally said, I can't see the defendant as a human because humans are humane. And if you're not being humane, I can't class you as part of humanity. Even the judge saw how much of an impact it had had. And to be honest, she was amazing. Like, if you were sat in that courtroom, it parked faith into us, but then when hearing the sentencing, it made us lose faith just because of how much he was able to get away with. She was on our side, as in she'd heard the arguments and she knew exactly what he'd done. And yet she was constrained, and you could tell she was constrained to the maximum 5 years. And the only reason he got 3 was because he pled guilty. And the only reason he pled guilty was because he was caught.
So much footage, you couldn't deny it, could you? Yeah.
Exactly. And it's like law literally says, like, if you plead guilty, you automatically get a third off, but it doesn't account for the fact that why you pled guilty. So he didn't plead guilty because he felt any sense of remorse. We can tell that.
Yeah.
He pled guilty because he was caught.
Because it was his best option. If you wanted to take a message forward from all this, to try and inject even a morsel of positivity into what's going on, if we can take away something and learn from this, what would that be for you?
I think it's down to my dad's core being, to be honest, and I spoke about it at the start. I think it's probably the thing that we should end on, in terms of my dad's such a peaceful person, and he lived a life without hatred, and yet this has happened to him purely because of hatred. Yeah. So the next time anybody gives someone else a dirty look, I'd think twice, because it's all sorts of those sorts of things that have caused people to do this, because people are so comfortable with being hateful now that it elevates and it elevates until it gets to that point. Whereas if you just thought twice about, doing anything, nobody would be in this position.
And I know this wasn't why you've done this interview, and it's not why you're on here, but there's a GoFundMe page.
Yeah.
So I want to encourage anybody, if you can give a little to really help with this recovery in this situation, that would be amazing. We'll put links in the description. We'll put a card up here that you can click on as well if you want to just hop across and even donate a £1 or £2. And please do any comments or anything like that. If you want to pass on your good wishes, put them in the comments. We'll make sure they get across to the family as well.
I do want to say thank you to you guys as well. And this came from a Twitter post that I put on, and there's been literally no negativity whatsoever on that post, as in over 8,000 people have seen it and responded to it. And every single comment that I've read, and I've read every single comment and DM that people have given, it's reinstalled and reinstilled faith into us and the family, because getting through something as bad as this hasn't been possible without everybody around us.
Gurdas, I really want to thank you for joining us. Thank you for being so open and honest about your story and your father's story and what's going on for you guys. I think we'll leave it at that, and I'll hand back over to the podcast.
Thank you.
So, Duncan, off the back of that, and guys, feel free to jump in and chime in. A few questions. Is 3 years long enough?
No. I mean, this is something that came out. It's like, I've obviously got very differing beliefs to, the religion that Gurdas and his father share. But that doesn't mean that he's not human to me. And what happened was inhuman. And I really agree with Gurdas in that sense, that at that point, the attacker lost all humanity. There was nothing to that but that complete loss. And I don't care what you believe, who you are, what your race, religion, sexuality, colour, diversity is. You're human. And that was inhuman what happened to him. And I think 3 years, that guy's life, the family's lives have been distorted and disrupted and for his father particularly, destroyed forever. 3 years doesn't come close to making up for that.
Do you think we are culturally a bit too quick now to jump to almost the style of, and I don't use this term lightly, vigilante justice?
I'll answer first, I guess. Yeah, I think we do. I think this is what we see in America a lot at the moment, is this kind of justification for actions based on what we believe is, the British way or the American way or the whatever way. And we're quick to jump to based on whatever historical acts have taken place. I liken it to now. Would you judge somebody who is German based on the Second World War? Of course not. And so do we judge people who have a differing religion, a different belief from us? Do we blame them for 9/11 or any of the subsequent attacks? No, they're not the people who perpetrated this. That, someone has the same belief as you doesn't make you an accomplice to their acts.
Correct.
And I think we jump on that.
Simon, what do you think?
I think the vigilante thing has been around for quite some time, and the police aren't doing enough of it. Just trying to track it down and stop it. I mean, this was a vicious attack that's destroyed a person's life and life-changing injuries. 3 years, certainly not enough when it comes up for parole. Give them 10. You need a deterrent. 3 years is not a deterrent. They'll be out in 3 years and they won't care any less.
They'll be out in a year. They'll be out in a year.
Yeah, probably about a year and a half. They'll probably do a year and a half and the rest on parole. So that's not a justice system. The justice system has been broken for some time. You don't get a life sentence anymore. You get, 13, 15 years for a life sentence now. The whole system needs reevaluating, and the crime today doesn't fit the punishment.
What do you think, Chris?
I think there's a chase of an adrenaline. Mob mentality, there's a psychology behind it, and I think that people want to impress others, and they think that if they stand up above a parapet and they take action, what they believe is right, I think they're chasing adrenaline. I think they're looking for adoration.
I think it comes back to something you'd said before, Chris, is that you're almost in these online communities. And if someone goes against it, you risk losing your friends and your social circle and the people who are supporting you. So you kind of go along with it on the basis of this is now my community. And if I go against that, and so it almost breeds this aggression and violence against people on the basis of whatever diversity they have.
I think there's an unstoppable wave as well once it starts. I think all common sense goes out the window. And the reason being is that nobody is looking to stop and think or to get the facts. They're looking to take the next step, and they're moving as a mob to do this. And I think it goes online, it goes in real life. It's something that does need to be stamped out, but how you combat it, how do you combat a mob? You can't. It's just a human thing that we do.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I'm no stranger to sort of like mob mentalities and pile-ons, whether it's in the physical world or the online, simply for having an opinion or being in a film. And then other people tend to like come for you and stuff. And I think it's, again, where we live in a culture where we're quick to anger, quick to act upon that anger, and we don't step back and assess things enough. We live in a very instantaneous, fast-food culture, which I think is psychologically dangerous. So this is a prime example of what happens when that spills out into the real world. And it literally ruins people's lives.
It does. What you said there really, it resonates in the sense that so I'm a big Star Wars fan. I think most of us in this particular group of people are. But you had the whole sort of Jar Jar Binks and the reaction that a mob had to Jar Jar Binks. And I confess I was one of them. I hated Jar Jar Binks. What we forget is there's a human being behind the character. And in a situation like this, we forget there's a human being behind the turban, if you like, in this situation. There's a human being behind the story. And when we dehumanize people, we open it up to this kind of dehumanization of a being because they don't align with your particular beliefs or structures.
Yeah, So yeah, it's a one of the harder interviews, I think. Don't get me wrong, I'm glad we did it because we are here to occasionally do some of that sort of like heavy lifting and highlight these things that need to be highlighted and aren't discussed enough. So thank you for doing it, Duncan, and a huge thank you to Gurdas for responding to us when we reached out and coming and telling your story. So
being so open and vulnerable in that story as well.
So yeah, I'm not sure how to move on from here, guys. It's going to be hard to bring the tone up. So therefore, I think we're gonna sign off there. So thank you as always for watching us. Your support means the world. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, engage with us on all our socials. Speaking of socials, segue, Duncan Casburn, if the world wants to get hold of you online, how can they do so?
At PDA Dad UK on all social media channels, but yeah, reach out to me that way.
Mr. Chris Lee Smith, same question to you.
I'm on Twitter and it's at the real Grump Dad.
Fantastic. And Simon, should people be out and about adventuring in this crazy world we call Earth and they're in an establishment and think, oh, I'd like to review this for access? How can they do that?
They can download the app on Apple and Android. It's called Snowball Community, and you can leave reviews and say if you'll go back or not.
And it's not a sex thing. And if people want to get hold of you personally, where can they go?
You can get me on Twitter, Simon Sanson 1, or Ability Access on Facebook.
Oh, that's never not going to be funny. And you can get hold of me at Adam_Pearson on the old Twitter sphere. So, as always, from me, Adam Pearson, from him, Duncan Casburn, from him, Chris Lee Smith, and from him, Simon Sampson, we'll see you all on the next one. And remember, don't be grumpy alone.